Hi, everyone. Welcome to Revolutionary Health. I'm Charles Stevens. The Revolutionary Health Program is an initiative of the Counter Narrative Project. We seek to have holistic discussions around Black women's health, and we invite you to participate in our conversation. As always, please like us on Facebook and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're almost at 100 subscribers, so please help us get to 100. And finally, please be sure to join the Counter Narrative email list. You can find the email list at thecounternarrative.org, and you can be up to date and up to speed with all the things that are happening within the Counter Narrative universe. And again, I'm Charles Stevens. I'm the founder and executive director of the Counter Narrative Project. And this evening, I'm really excited because I have the opportunity to speak with a writer and an advocate and an artist that I admire very much. I've known him since I was 20 years old, so I guess almost 20 years. And it's just been such an amazing friendship. And I invited him to write an essay for us for the Counter Narrative Project because of his just really incredible insights on this topic. And so I want to introduce you to Michael Gipson. Well, actually, I'm going to have Michael introduce himself. Michael, could you say a little bit about who you are and what you do and all that good stuff?
Sure. I'm L. Michael Gipson. Everybody just calls me Michael. And I am the founder of the Black Bear Brotherhood of Detroit, a social collective devoted to Black gay men of size and their advocates and admirers and allies. And speaking, let me do a shout out to Black Bear Brotherhood of Cincinnati. They just launched this week. So we have our first chapter outside of Detroit.
Mhm.
I'm also principal and founder of Faith Walk LLC, a nonprofit consulting firm located here in Detroit, Michigan. And I'm just glad to be here with Counter Narrative Project.
Absolutely. So, Michael, you wrote an essay for us called, um, oh my gosh, called Body Outsider. Body Outsider. It took me a second. It took me a second. It's been a long day, y'all. Body Outsider. And to my knowledge, it's one of the few, I think, critical essays that really explores the experiences of Black gay men in body image. It incorporates both, I think, a stunning critical lens, but it also offers a bit of personal experience and testimony, and even a little literary journalism, combining all those elements. And I don't know if I've quite read something like that before. So we were just really thrilled with you submitting your essay to us. To give our viewers an opportunity to learn a bit about this essay that we're referencing, would you mind just reading a brief excerpt for us?
Sure. The advocate in me loved it all, but the more cynical interrogator in me wondered how it could be more honest. What would it mean in such a body positivity utopian space to have people discuss their ambivalence with their bodies? The fact that after leaving this space of affirmation and acceptance, the afterglow would eventually fade, and a return to big boy social media groups that posted more muscle worship images than that of the girthy men of the body baptismal pool. What would it mean to discuss out loud the ways the encroaching, pale, thin, aged, and muscular bodies of the Parliament House houses regular weekend patronage, one merely roped off, but ever present, every evening, surrounded the big boy pride festivities like unwelcome fishbowl spectators on our Black Bear fantasy, our Black Bear fantasy cocoon, wrapped in protective blue and gold BBP police tape. What would it mean to say out loud that some of us here were not in love with every role we see or have that or have, and that some were merely faking it out of a desperate need to not experience being the body outsider yet again to one more space that was supposed to love and embrace us just as we are.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, and so that excerpt was kind of talking about. I attended Big Boy Pride in the spring of this year, and it was my first time ever going to the event. Counter Narrative Project had asked me to kind of write about what it was like as a first timer attending this type of event. It was their 8th year, their biggest year, from my understanding from the coordinators, the hosts of the event. They had something like 1,000 people or near 1,000 people there in Orlando, Florida, in a space called Parliament House, which allowed the Pride to be kind of all encompassed in one location. And it was like the host hotel, but also was the space for the concerts and the parties and the events. Meanwhile, at the same time that that was happening, Parliament House didn't stop their normal regular weekend activities, which included like a majority white space that was still had a party going on, and like a bare bar that was predominantly older and white. And so the way that the coordinator's trying to deal with the fact that these competing parties were happening in the same space or proximity was to rope off the spaces that were for us, like bubble wrap, but we could still be seen, right? Like we could still be watched. And so there were like guys who had absolutely no interest or viewed us as a curiosity or viewed us with disdain, who were kind of like observing this black bear utopia that they weren't supposed to have access to, but could visually see at any point. The majority white and Latino.
So they were kind of gazing at y'all. So in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, and it was a curious thing because you have these kind of things happening simultaneously. You have this space, this rare space where it's all these black gay men of size who only have access to each other in this kind of environment where we're all affirmed, all loved, all kind of like supposedly, all loved. And like, but then we're out the corner of our eyes, we're looking at, 50-year-old white guy who's like either fetishizing or wondering why we're there. And it was a strange dichotomy that was happening.
I can imagine. Yeah. Michael, could you say a little bit about, and also let me just say to our viewers, please feel free to ask questions. Feel free to comment. We absolutely welcome you as our other panelists from at home. But Michael, could you say a little bit about what it means to be a body outsider? What does it mean to be a black gay man of size in this moment?
So I have a very unique experience from some black gay men of size, in that those who've known me, I'm 43 years old. I have been literally every size. So I have been.
I feel like I've known you to do many of those sizes.
Right. Like I have, as a skinny kid, I got hit by a car when I was 10. I gained like 45 pounds that summer. And so when I entered my kind of middle school years as a fat kid, then I had experienced, unfortunately, a rape at 14 that caused me to kind of act out in some ways. And one of those ways was to be bulimic for a year. And so I lost 75 pounds that year. And then was like, I always joke with people that I learned the opposite lesson of the after school special from my bulimia experience at 14, because I went from being like the not popular, funny fat kid to being the most popular kid in school because I got small, right? Like, and I guess suddenly I had a face and I had a body, so that people was willing to embrace. And so, and nothing else about me had changed. That was literally the only thing between 14 and 15 that had changed. And then I was slim for the rest of my adolescence and into my college years, and started going to the gym around 17. By the time I moved to DC in the early 90s, I was a suitable muscle kid and club kid, and lived that life for about 13, 14 years, where I had this kind of idealized body type. I'm tall, I'm 6'2". So you're tall, you have musculature. I did some modeling during that time. I did art modeling for Howard University students. I did campaign modeling for social marketing campaigns. Just because in back of my head, I always was kind of like aware that this was not going to be always. I really took to heart the Boys in the Band line that beauty is terribly transitory, and that whatever I was experiencing now was going to be temporary.
It sounds like you were literally a shapeshifter in a sense.
Yeah, well, and to your question, your original question, how it informs my thinking about being this size now. So like now I'm definitely a bigger guy, not thick, not husky, fat, big guy. Like it was not like unequivocally.
Well, to be fair, thick is an umbrella term.
Right. Well, you know, people be like, I'm thick, and they'll still have like a 32-inch waist, and you're like, sis, no, not
Well,
thick.
thick can also encompass skinny fat. Have you heard of that? Like that?
I believe people just started coming up with stuff. Like skinny fat for me is just like, child, you're like medium size, or regular average size,
Let's
whatever. So
anybody's identities, remember?
exactly. But it is interesting because what that journey has taught me over those many years, and having people receive me differently in each of those sizes, is that everybody always believes that the grass is greener on the other side. There are problems that accompany each size and shape. Nobody gets away from struggle. Nobody gets away from pain. Nobody gets away from heartbreak. The most self-conscious people I knew were muscleheads. The most, super self-conscious people I knew were gym rats when I was in the gym all the time with other people who never saw themselves as they really were, who always saw the flaws.
One of the things that I pushed you for in the essay, as we, had a series of conversations over the writing, and I was wondering if you could share a bit for our viewers this evening, is having been someone that's been, as you said, every size, how has intimacy looked through your journey with your body? Like, how has intimacy looked with other Black men throughout the different body sizes that you've been? Has it been different? Has it been the same? Can you not? Yeah.
No, it's definitely been different. I reference in the essay a lot Roxane Gay's Hunger, which if you've not read it, I recommend for people, particularly people of size and people who are curious about this topic. I think she's kind of lays out really bare and naked in ways that I've never read or seen, what the experience of it is like to live in America, to live in this country as a person of size. The reason I also reference her in terms of this question is she talked about the body as a site of trauma, and her weight was a response to trauma. And I'd been raped at 14, like I said. I was fat when I was raped. My attacker kept referencing how fat my ass was while he was raping me. And that definitely informed my decision to lose 75 pounds within the next year. So even then, the sexuality and my sex and how it plays out in the body and how my body weight responded to that was, were connected, right? And so, and then I've talked very conscious with some of my friends in the late 90s, early 2000s, several of my friends who were really close to me, who were way less promiscuous than I was at the time, became HIV positive, or some other illness, that sexually transmitted illness that was in some ways permanent or chronic. And so being aware that I was in my group, the Samantha, if we're talking Sex and the City, the Blanche, if we're talking Golden Girls, the person was most likely
our girlfriends or living single.
Right. Well, but I don't know that there's a whore in Girlfriends in living single either, really. So I was, the whore in our group, and certainly enjoyed the fruits of having this idealized body that people wanted access to. And did not respond well to the attention, in that I didn't always manage the volume well, and didn't trust myself to manage the volume well moving forward. And so gaining weight was in some ways a response to that. Gaining weight was a response to, it was a self-protective measure, because in my musclehead bullshit, I assume people would be less attracted to me because I would be a certain size. And it wasn't always conscious, but it certainly, looking back, it was very conscious and deliberate on some level. And so,
armor for you, like a protection.
It was an armor for me, and it did stymie the volume. But I always joke, it didn't stop me from having sex. It didn't stop me from meeting guys who were attracted to me. It just changed the type of guy in some instance. No longer were people looking at me to be a trophy boyfriend. No longer were people looking for me to be dumb. which was something that happened pretty often. People would be really shocked and they would find out I was well read or had dual degrees. So like all of that kind of craziness that kind of goes with what people assume around people of a certain body type, that disappeared. But what also happened was a sense of being invisible. I went from being hyper visible to being almost invisible. And that took a while to manage. And then sexually, there's a certain amount of narcissism that happens in sex, where you're worshiping somebody else's body, they're worshiping yours, you're trying to make them feel good, they're trying to make you feel good. And there's kind of an appreciation of the body. And for a long time, I would say several years, it was hard for me to trust that process. It was hard for me to be in that process and be all the way in it, because it was hard for me to accept that somebody was appreciating a body that I was not appreciating. Whereas when I was a musclehead, I was very conscious, very arrogant even about the power that came with that, and the fact that they were enjoying being able to be with this kind of body, and that they were celebrating and being able to have access to this kind of body. And so, and I had worked really hard on that body. So, it was a certain amount of pride that I had in that too.
Connected to your last point, could you share a bit about the body of size, the black bare body, the black thick body, if you will? Could you speak about it as a site of pleasure? Like we talked about, the larger bodies as being a site of trauma, but what about as a site of pleasure? What about as a site of?
Oh, absolutely. I think that one of the things that I've been big now almost as long as I have been small or muscular. And so now I've certainly, the issues that I had earlier on when I evolved certainly have changed. I mean, I recognize that there are guys who love the love handles that I wanted to get rid of. There are guys who love rubbing my belly. There are guys who love to cuddle.
And I know I hate when people touch my stomach, like.
Well, it's interesting because when you're a musclehead,
I want to lean into it, but it's
I mean, you have to think about how much of a 180 it would have been for somebody like me, who, if I was in a form-fitted top in a gay club or party, I had learned how to breathe while still kind of holding in my stomach, which is something a lot of people who are muscular will tell you they know how to do. To going from that, because I didn't want people to see the stomach at all, to like having somebody rub on it in like in orgasmic ecstasy, because that's like such a turn on for them. It was crazy. It took a while.
You made the point about like holding in your stomach. And I guess in a way one could sort of leap to say that you were wanting to sort of shrink yourself or make your own self kind of less visible in certain ways or certain parts of yourself. And you also talked about being less visible or feeling more invisible and having to reconcile that. Could you just share a bit more about like what all that means for
you? When I was skinny before I even got muscular, that was just about like there was certainly an act of taking up less space, and wanting to fit in, and I was in high school. I was a sophomore when by the time I had lost the weight and we started becoming popular. And so there was a conformity thing that I was trying to do. When I was a musclehead, you hear a lot of guys in the gym talk about kind of like wanting to create their body as a work of art and seeing their body as kind of a work of art that they're personally chiseling and creating and shaping. And, like an artist who's not satisfied with their early drafts, you're trying to get it to where you want it to be. And that's where like a lot of the self-consciousness comes in. I think that's also where the muscle dysmorphia comes in, where people don't see themselves as they are because they're in their mind, they're trying to get to this idealized place. And some guys are born naturally ripped up. They go to the gym for 5 minutes. They can get the idealized body. And a lot of us, you have to work 3 times as hard to get half the results. And so it can be a mindfuck. I think that one of the things I have enjoyed and tried to share with other bears, because there is kind of this commentary that I hear, especially somebody who runs a bear group, while there's kind of this body positivity and affirming of the self, there's also kind of this belief in the back of the head that life would be better if they just lost a certain amount of weight. I mean, that's why you see people taking like these very dangerous surgeries, which, are still incredibly dangerous. And Roxane Gay goes into great detail about what are kind of the side effects of these surgeries to lose this weight if you're morbidly obese. And some people are doing it for health reasons, but just many people are doing it because they think if they just lose this weight, they'll certainly get more love, they'll get more friendship, they'll get more value, they'll have more power, even if they're not using that language. And I try to sell them that there are just as many people who have beautiful bodies in the traditional classical sense, who are on those same apps, who are lonely, who are committing suicide, who don't love themselves. Like, it doesn't, the body is, there's certainly privileges that come with it. And I've lived with those privileges. I've had those privileges, but there is a lot that comes with not being obsessed with your body. Like, I got so much more done when I wasn't obsessing over my body. I got 2 degrees completed. I wrote a book. Like, I got a documentary film thing happening. Like, when I wasn't spending so much time and energy, because it's like a second job, being in the gym 20 hours a week and kind of obsessing over my diet and all of that. I just got it freed me up.
What is your essay? So to the dudes on the apps, let's say, that have the sort of cliche language in their profile, no fat guys, or all that kind of stuff. Well, typically it's no fats, no femmes, but I think specifically for dudes that are really on the body fascism tip. What do you want your essay to say to them? Like, what would you want them to get out of your essay?
One, that they're not by themselves. And this, whether they're a big guy or not, because I mean, you kind of how we got to skinny thick and all of these other terms was because so many people are not happy with or satisfied what they look like, right? So it's not something that's exclusive to bears. Self-love is not a destination; it's a process that ebbs and flows. There are highs and lows in that. They're not by themselves and how they feel about themselves. And that at the end of the day was, you need to do what you need to do for yourself to feel good about you. There is somebody for you at every size. I have guys who have dated me, who are amazing men, who would not have dated me when I was skinny because I wasn't what they were attracted to, or they would not have dated me when I was a musclehead because I wasn't what they're attracted to.
Let me try it a different way. So the dude that goes to the sex party, and he gets to the door, and they say, "Not you. You can't come in because your body isn't what we're desiring. What your body's not acceptable for this space." What do you want your essay? What do you want him to get out of your essay?
To get what he needs to get in within himself, to be able to give a fuck you to that space and go make his own space. I mean, like, go make your own space. Go make your own sex party. Make your own. I started Black Bear Brotherhood of Detroit because I wanted to have a space that affirmed me, and I knew there were other brothers who were having similar experiences. And I just started it as a monthly potluck. I didn't have a lot of money. That's why I made it a potluck, and I wasn't like catering. And now we're over a year old, 100 members, new chapter coming into Cincinnati, because other people feel like you feel. I'm actually on that no fats, no femmes, no. I'm of a different mindset than I think that is the popular progressive mindset around those things. I know it can be hurtful. I know how people experience that. I actually do think that the one place you get to discriminate is who has access to your body. I don't like everybody. I don't like every, masculine dude. I don't like every thug dude. I don't like every, whatever is supposed to be the desirable, every musclehead.
My question has always been, it's one thing to have preferences, to say,
right.
I like oranges, but I really, 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 really like navel oranges. Or I really like apples, but I really like Gala apples. I don't necessarily despise Macintosh apples, and so forth
Right.
and so on. And what I find is that it's not just a sense of a disaffinity for. It's not just you know, I I prefer Apple over a Samsung or something. It's like utter repulsion and it's structural violence and its stigma. Like it's different to me. It shows it often manifests not just as a I prefer one thing over another. Oftentimes it manifests as like not just rejection, but like just repulsion. And then my question is always, well, what is it? Is there a way that one can certainly, if desire is a spectrum, if there is there a way
Hmm.
that folks can like have a certain affinity for one side of a spectrum more than others without the utterances of repulsion, really? Because like, what does it mean to be considered repulsive? Like, what does it mean to be? Because desirability isn't just desirability; also carries social consequences too,
Sure.
right? Um, and so I think that I've always wanted our community to really think about ways that we can construct more ethical forms of desire where we don't have to be so violent toward each other
Sure.
in pursuing what we think would make us feel good, right? Sex should be joy. Sex should be wonderful. Sex should be amazing. Sex doesn't have to be weaponized to harm people because they're not able to assimilate into a very narrow set of standards. And that's just always been my take on it. What are your thoughts?
I mean, so my first attitude about everything at every size that I've been is I'm attracted to those people who are attracted to me. And then it sounds really basic,
Oh
but
no, it sounds
I don't
perfect.
want
I'm
I
glad.
don't want to be your charity case. I don't want you to date me because you think it's the right thing to do. I don't want you to so you can check your box on liberal or progressive, whatever. I want you to look at my body and get a fucking hard on and want to be with it. And that's what's gonna make me excited about want to be with you too. And so
But could it be a
I
spectrum?
hear
Could it be a spectrum of intimacy? So maybe it's not somebody immediately starts with I want to fuck the shit out of you. Could it just be I want to have physical intimacy with you? Maybe it just looks like let me just hold you. And I may
Mhm.
not off the bat be like experience a deep sexual desire initially, but maybe that could be the entry point for helping me transform because ultimately I think transformation happens with action. And so if you never even there isn't like an entry point for intimacy, then how will you ever really transform?
I think that the starting gate for that conversation isn't the apps, isn't trying to get people to change their preference statements on the apps. I think the entry point begins in letting Black boys know that whatever they desire, whatever that looks like, whatever they're emotionally, spiritually, sexually attracted to and connects with is okay, right? Because there's a lot of guys who love big guys, but are ashamed that they love big guys, right? There are a lot of big guys who are shamed for liking guys who are skinny or small. They're like, oh, you must be engaged in the self hate because you're not dating another big guy. And while there's certainly conditionings that have to be taken into account, how desire is conditioned, how desire is politicized, how desire is shaped, and you want people to do that self-interrogative work to make sure that what they desire is really informed by what they desire and not informed by them adhering to some social mores that they think is right or wrong.
But do you
Um,
think the cult of the body beautiful itself is a conformity to the mores?
I think the cult of the body beautiful is more complex and layered than that. For me, being a musclehead when I was a musclehead was as much about a reaction to being the bullied kid, was as much a reaction to being considered not enough as that bullied gay kid. It was a reaction to not being considered masculine when I was that bullied gay kid. Um, and so I think that it's, as much as people like to say, oh, it's only about people wanting to have a body that other people want to fuck. That may be true for some people, and that's your goal, fine. But I think that for many people, weight, size, the shape of it, the might of it, how they use it has deeper connotations. And it was one of the reasons why I loved Roxane Gay's book so much when she was able to cite, yo, me gaining this weight was about me not wanting to protect myself against being sexually assaulted again, right? Like, and then experiencing a different kind of assault, right, on the body, right, where everybody telling her she's too fat to live, right. So yeah, it's complicated, which is,
I
a
know.
very limited way of saying that.
And what I really appreciate and love about your essay is that I think it really helped give us the language to talk about these very complicated issues. I think it helped push the boundaries of our imagination in terms of what we think can be possible, in terms of how we see the world. And I really ultimately think that that really is a sort of act of resistance, because you're giving people some additional tools to be able to grapple with these very, very difficult things. Final question, Michael.
Sure.
What would you say to the you in 10th grade, like when your body started to transform, like what would you want to say to yourself at that point?
To not be so concerned with the gaze of others.
Mm,
I was, yeah, that was, it's sad how much of my life, how much of my energy I spent trying not just to be acceptable, but valuable.
mm,
And the strategy to do that was around appearance. Um, and once I stopped living that as my daily bread, my whole life opened up. My friendship network diversified, my interest in the things that I got involved in, my accomplishments varied. And that's not to say you can't be a musclehead and still do great things in the world and still be a compassionate human being. It's not saying any of those things. But for me, I spent a great deal of my time centering my life around the male gaze and how to be, and the mainstream gaze, and how to be acceptable and valuable to that gaze.
mm,
Um, and the real freedom came, and it's a work and it's a walk and it takes. And there are days, I say in the essay, there are days in which I'm not good at that walk, and there are days in which I don't love myself, and there are
I
days
think
in
it
which
feels honest
it's
to
not
use the
coming
word.
together, right? Right? Because but we talk about body positivity, like once you
Yeah,
get there, you're just
I'm
loving
there and I'm
the
good and I
movies,
love
and you're like
myself.
you're like right, and that's just not reality. Like that time you go into try to buy that shirt that you really want to wear, and they don't have your size. That
Mm,
time you look for a stock photography image, like we did for Black Bear Brotherhood, and can't find any stock photography images of Black men of size without them eating or being in a gym. You know,
mm.
um,
That's not comical, ultimately.
or even being able to sit in a seat comfortably in a theater
Yeah.
because this theater was made 100 years ago and the seats haven't been updated to sit what the sizes of Americans are today. And so,
Yeah.
there are ways in which you are reminded that your body is unruly, to use her term, Gay's term, and unacceptable. And so you have to do the work to make it acceptable for you, and surround yourself with people who are going to affirm you. I always say you never got to tell nobody fat that they fat. Then they know they fat before you ever know they fat. They know every single day.
Just being
that,
over your body. Like I remember when I started gaining weight, I was horrified at how people would just come up to me and remark on, Charles, you've been eating or you've been working. It's like just a lot of commentary around my body, as my body started to change.
sure.
And I just remember being so annoyed by it. Like, why is there commentary over my body? Like, just entitlement over, commenting. Like, I could never. But anyway, the producers are telling me it's time to wrap up. So I guess
Yeah, I mean, but to your point though, I mean, I do want to close on that. I mean, if you see somebody who's of size and you feel like you need to say something to them for their own good, I promise you, there's nothing you can say that they've not said to themselves.
mm,
Restrain yourself. So, and if you feel like you got to say something affirming, say something loving,
mm,
say something supportive of that person. Because the other part of this, and we haven't really talked about this at all, and I convey it in the essay, is that I actually have a thyroid condition, which also informs my size. And so you just have no idea why people are what they are and what their walk is. So, be loving and be graceful and be mindful of each other.
all right. Michael Gipson, everyone. Please check out his essay on the counter narrative website, on our blog, The Reckoning. It's a two-part essay. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It's one of the best, probably one of the best essays I've read this decade. So please, please, please check it out. Michael, if
Thank
people
you.
want to get in touch with you or follow your work, how do they find you?
So I'm on Facebook every day, as people will tell you. I'm a Facebook junkie. I don't really do Instagram, but also if you want to learn more about Black Bear Brotherhood, you can sign up for our newsletter at blackbearbrotherhood.life. That's blackbearbrotherhood.life. We'll have a new website launching soon, and we look forward to hearing from you.
All right. And again, everyone, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel at the YouTube on YouTube and make sure you like us on Facebook. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, we're here every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Don't be a stranger. Bye bye.